Alright DMs, what's the funniest way that you've trolled your players? Let us know in the comments below. Probably not the funniest, but I let them continue fighting a basilisk for a couple of rounds after they killed it, since they were still averting their eyes. Oh, you know, just roll random dice sometimes, with no explanation, then put a very grave look on your face and try very hard not to make eye contact with one of them for a while. Amongst the dragon's hoard was a beautifully framed painting of a river with a single red fish in it. I described it in more detail than the other objects, making it seem super important. They cast Detect Magic, and I honestly told them there was nothing magical about it. But they were still intrigued. Eventually, they asked the local baron about it, and he said it was the famous painting called the Red Herring. I love putting levers and buttons all over dungeons. Most have very obvious uses, changing pathways, opening doors, and so on. But occasionally, I'll throw one in that does absolutely nothing. Sometimes right next to the one that actually does something. Could I roll an insight check to deduce what this button might do? Now, I wasn't the DM for this, but back when Eberron came out, our 3.5 group had a series of missions in the Mournland. Our DM came up with a plan to mess with our paladin and told everyone else about it except for him. The DM proceeded to kill the entire party except for the paladin and promised he'd figure something out when we met again the next week. When we reconvened, we started playing the entire previous session over again, pretending not to understand the paladin when he asked what was happening, right up until the near total party kill. Then we did it again and again. The look on his face as he slowly realized we were all messing with him, oh, magnificent. Now, he eventually figured it out and saved all of us from the Fae running the loop. About a decade later, I watched the Mystery Spot episode of Supernatural and realized our DM had completely stolen the plotline. I throw random magical traits onto enemies to keep my players on their toes. Having them encounter a grunt enemy with something like regeneration, innate spellcasting, or absorb elements is a ton of fun. There was a lengthy riddle written on the big bad evil guy's castle door. I set a timer on my phone to see how long it would take them to figure it out. The solution? The door was unlocked the entire time. It took them 15 minutes to realize. I told them I was a pretty good DM, but I'm actually pretty mid. I don't know why that one got me. I let the party spend 4 rounds carefully and cautiously healing, buffing, repositioning, and plodding around a fascinated froghemoth, without telling them that it only had 4 HP left. I gave them a door that would slap them and shut itself whenever they tried to open it. The solution? Knock and ask politely to enter. It took them half an hour to figure that one out. Ask them to clarify exactly what they're doing in a specific instance, then roll a d20. Regardless of the outcome, stay completely stone-faced. I made all the evidence point to their beloved silly NPC sidekick as the big bad evil guy. It was a complete misunderstanding. It didn't start intentionally, but I described the town square as having a corn market building. The players started asking locals about corn on the cob, thinking I meant maize. Meanwhile, I was using corn as the generic term for a grain crop. Later, I described the cornfields as having chest-high stalks with bearded clumps of seeds, and they assumed it was some kind of fantasy crop. Every time something mysterious happened, they'd say, "Yeah, and the townsfolk are super weird about corn." I kept it going until they left the area. Totally inconsequential, but their bafflement was hilarious. It was the 3rd session of a new campaign. The party was making their way out of the starting town on the main road when they came across a small destroyed caravan and were ambushed by bandits. After the fight, they looted everything and found, well, almost nothing. One of the players cast Detect Magic and found a magical item beneath the floorboards of the largest wagon. It was a deck of cards. They absolutely lost their minds, thinking it was the deck of many things. It was the deck of illusions. Their fear gave me life. I slowly, over the course of a couple of sessions, changed the color of one monster, a pacified zombie troll. Only one person caught it, and everyone else said they were crazy. It went from gray to green, and after a point, freed itself and went on a rampage. It was fantastic. Had an NPC, a dwarf with a really thick accent that everyone called Shart. They found out much later that he was calling himself Short, but no one could understand his accent, and it stuck. Oh yeah, I'm weird short. First encounter of the run. Standard bandit camp encounter was pretty challenging, but the twist was when all the bandits died, they came back as undead due to the overarching magic of the big bad in the campaign. I gave the opportunity for arcane and perception checks in the fight for them to see what was going on, and they failed them all. When the resurrection happened, they went from jolly and whimsical to completely quiet and locked in. They survived, by the skin of their teeth, by the way, and it was amazing. In Descent into Inverness, I wanted to use an infernal contract, but I knew my players would be too clever to trust this, so I made a plan. The contract was simple, and without clauses or hidden text, something I made sure to do otherwise, they would not trust it. The contract required the player to retrieve a ring from the crypt of the Hell Riders for an imp, and in exchange the player would receive a magic item of their choice. Failure would mean the devil gets to take a magic item of choice. Simple item for item. The thing was, I gave this contract to 3 PCs in secret, and there was only one ring. One ring to rule them all. Pulled off a false Hydra. When they realized what was happening, over 2 hours into their investigation, they lost their shit, and it was glorious, especially because it was a modern setting. I set up a dungeon. There was a huge giant ant colony in there. Every night, they would come out and swarm the dungeon and clean up the mess. Inside, there were wights trapped in a warded room. They made shades who created zombies, who would swarm the dungeon. The players were trapped in a dungeon between 2 endless hordes. Ants versus zombies. The secret holiday specials. I plan a session close to a holiday to be comprised of holiday-appropriate activities. And then I'm very careful not to use any of the words associated with that holiday, and I only give away the game at the very end. After the second or third with the same group, I received my most cherished piece of feedback from a player ever. You motherfucker! You did it again! I love trolling with minor magic objects. You find a magical-looking deck of cards. When they try it out, the cards each perform small-scale party tricks with limited charges. You put on the ring, and your character is astonished that they seem to be invisible. They aren't. It's a cursed object that makes the wearer absolutely confident in any attempt at stealth regardless of results. The sword shimmers with otherworldly power. That's the magic. The sword just looks badass. A scroll is written with an unknown eldritch language, the script glowing with green light. If translated, the text is actually a crappy love poem to a succubus they summoned one time, but lost the ritual notes for. It's magical because he was trying to reverse engineer the spell to send it to her. Oh, that's kinda cute though. In response to your prayer for aid, the heavens open, the clouds part, and a ray of sunshine delivers a chunk of glassy rock softly into your hands. Etched onto the glass in celestial are the words, "I believe in you!" A few years ago, I was DMing for my friends who have never played at that point. I gave them a bag of holding that had about 35 gold in it. They put their hand in it, thought gold, and pulled out a gold coin. They did this a couple more times and were convinced they had a bag of unlimited gold. Now, they were sad when they pulled the last piece out and it would no longer work. I'm always asking, are you sure that's what you're doing? Or repeating what they say their actions are in that "are you sure" voice. We play AD&D, so there are no perception checks to aid the players. When players enter an empty room and search it, I might say something like, "The room is completely, totally, entirely, and utterly apparently empty." They don't like it at all and feel like they're missing something. I like to write a note to one player that says, "Smile, don't say anything, scribble a reply and pass this back." It really keeps them on their toes. Also, early on in the campaign, I like to have them come across a prayer gate or standing stones or something, and then ask pointedly, "Who goes through first?" And then do nothing. Makes them question everything, and makes it harder to metagame. Finally, when they are used to those tricks, I start to set up hints that doppelgangers can go deep cover, replacing someone and then forgetting they are a changeling. Then I start to drop hints that one of them might be a doppelganger, and subtly hint privately to one player that they might be a changeling, but they aren't. That really keeps them on their toes. I've pulled this once, and it was pretty fun. The party is in town, bonus points if it's a seedy part of town, but in my example, it was just a local inn, and they see a suspicious hooded figure whispering to the bartender before going upstairs. Try to pique their curiosity. When they eventually confront that hooded figure, either upstairs or later in the game, you delegate the description of that mystery figure to a particular player. As you grab the hooded figure's shoulder and turn them around to demand their name, their hood falls and you see their face. "Rogue, could you please describe what your mom looks like?" Not me, but my DM secretly gave every player an individual mission to kill the same person. We all ganked him at once, and nobody could stop laughing when we realized what the DM had done. I once put a curse on the party's wizard that drained an intelligence point periodically. In my world, remove curse didn't remove curses. It just told you what you needed to do to remove the curse. In this case, the wizard had to eat the left eye of a troll born on Tuesday. The problem was, due to trolls' biological cycles, there were never trolls born on Tuesday. They finally found an island on the map named Tuesday where they found a troll, and had to convince the troll to give up its left eye, which it would grow back. The wizard was getting pretty low on int when they solved this quest. Some cultists were taking a young girl named Wanda to be blessed by the deep god, an aboleth. The aboleth in question had been badly injured in a fight with a beholder, so while it was still a significant threat, it wasn't a horrible fight for the relatively low PCs. The cultists didn't put up much of a fight to stop them either. They knew their god would be reborn anew, free of all the holes blasted through it, just in the deepest seas of the Underdark, sowing the seeds for a future encounter. They rescued the girl, and she happily offered to show them where the old god was. Since they had been encouraged to take on this quest by an old and powerful Ent druid named Absinthius, they let her lead them into a cabin in the woods, where a cavern with a lake was hidden. She raced inside ahead of them, and they had to quickly follow her footsteps to the basement. There, they found her leaping into the water, swimming straight for the aboleth. Panicked, they jumped in after her, only to start immediately asphyxiating because their heads were out of the water, and they had encountered the aboleth's mucus. That delay gave Wanda just enough time to reach the aboleth. It gave her something that looked like a frog egg to eat. And then she transformed, taking on aspects of a deep one before swimming away as the party fought the monster. Around that time, one of the players looked at me, groaned, and said, "She's a fish called Wanda!" That she was. That she was. Later, they learned that Absinthius was also known as Wormwood. He wasn't just lacking leaves because it's winter, he was an Ent, a druid, and a lich. Because Artemisia absinthium is the wormwood bush, which has a lot of cultural significance. He belonged to a sect of winter druids who believed that the current world needed to be destroyed so something new could grow. His followers explained that this wasn't a bad thing, it was just the natural cycle of the world, which had already gone through several of these rebirths. And besides, he wasn't actively working toward that right now. The last thing he wanted was for things like an aboleth to write the first words of the new world. So months and months later, when a representative of the Elven Emperor's court referred to him as the Lich Wormwood instead of his Latin name, that same player, the one who got the Wanda joke, was the one who finally connected the dots when the representative clarified that he was talking about the druid they had allied with earlier. Yes, he was evil, but against ancient and otherworldly evil, he was on their side. A lot of enemy of my enemy kind of stuff was planned had the story progressed that far, but I moved and the adventure got shelved. I should go back and write it up. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and let us know in the comments below what's the funniest way you've actually trolled your players. And of course, if you want to ever help out on the channel, you don't have to, but if you do, you can join our membership program to get early access to videos. We love you all. Please be safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you next time. Toodaloo for now.